Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Zero, and this is a ninja's guide to Hayabusa. Hayabusa is easily one of the strongest assassins in the game, with superior mobility, flickers, unavoidable ults, powerful split push potential, and an arsenal of lethal shurikens at his disposal. When playing Hayabusa, any lane is playable, but remember that the playstyle will change depending on the lane and the role that you decide to take. This guide will help you become a true master of the shadows by teaching you the basics, combos, split pushing, side laning, mid laning, jungling, ganking, and attacking high crowd control enemies. Along with all of these tips will be very strong warnings about the risks associated with each action because many are high risk, high reward. I also want to take a couple of seconds to thank every single one of you for the feedback and support. I've reached 300 subscribers, which is a huge milestone for me. I hope to keep on growing along with you guys, but without further ado, into the guide. Hayabusa has a unique set of skills, and in order to truly understand how to use him, we must all start at ground zero. Let's check out his skills. Skill 1 is called Phantom Shuriken, and what this skill does is simply throw out 3 shuriken that travel back to Hayabusa. Things to note here are that each shuriken can tag an enemy twice with his passive. The best thing about Phantom Shuriken, however, is that it has a natural 3% spell vamp per upgrade, meaning it has a total of 18% spell vamp without the need of any item when maxed out. Speaking of those shuriken tags, why are they kunai instead of shuriken? Those kunai marks indicate how many stacks of your passive are on the enemy. Each stack makes the enemies take 5% more damage from Hayabusa. All damage, not just skills. Here's a basic attack with no marks, with all marks, and skill 1 with no marks versus all marks. Pretty neat, huh? On to skill 2. This skill is called Quad Shadow because it produces 4 shadows. Genius. Anyway, this skill consists of 5 parts: the initial dash, and then the teleportation to each shadow. If you tag an enemy with a shadow, they will receive a 60% slowdown, and it'll deal damage to them as well. Enemies will take more damage if you then travel to the shadow that has tagged to them. Quad Shadow is the most misused skill on Hayabusa, mostly because it was reworked and nobody uses the insane power of the cooldown reset it carries. It reduces the cooldown of his shuriken by 1 for every shadow you teleport to. I'll show you this combo later because it is literally his highest source of damage. Now, the thing that everyone fears about Hayabusa is his ultimate. Many people try to say it can be countered by standing near allies or minions, and that's partly true since they will take less damage overall, but the damage output from this skill is well in the 4000 range collectively. While using Ouiji's Shadow Kill, Hayabusa is completely immune to everything because he becomes a shadow. It is a very powerful skill that should be used properly to avoid crowd control situations. Okay, Zero, thanks for telling me everything I already knew about Hayabusa. Show me what I'm here for. Relax, things are about to get good. You know, usually people say that builds are always changing because they depend on the enemy team and what they build right. Well, for Haya, it's a bit different. I've done about 30 different tests with many different builds on Hayabusa, and I have come to the conclusion that this build right here is the absolute best build you can get for him, and he is 100% reliant on this build to maximize damage. First off, we want to get the magic shoes 100% of the time, since we will be wanting to spam his skills early game as much as possible. The cooldown is absolutely necessary, and because we got this cooldown, it is wise to rush the Blade of Despair first, since we will be fine with the natural spell vamp that skill 1 carries. Because we rushed Blade of Despair, all of our skills now do very high numbers of damage, and enemy squishy targets can be killed with one combo if they are caught alone, thanks to the passive of this item. However, as the game progresses, we will need a bit more oomph. This is where Endless Battle comes in to save the day. We already have a very high basic attack, and Endless Battle is here to deal a whopping 85% of our physical attack stat as true damage after every skill is cast when we use a basic attack. This ability has a cooldown of 1.5 seconds, and we will be abusing this passive to the max. Other good things this item brings to the table are 10% more cooldown, 5% movement speed, and of course, 15% lifesteal. Now, the next item is going to probably trigger some of you, but I deem it extremely important and stronger than the Blade of the Heptases. This item will allow all of your physical damage, whether it comes from skills or basic attacks, to cut through 40% of an enemy's total armor. So it guarantees a decent damage output from Hayabusa consistently. It's also a very important item to equip when you have to split push with Hayabusa, as it ignores 20% of a turret's defense when attacking it. In comes the glorious item, Berserker's Fury. We want to get this item for two reasons. The first one being raw critical damage, and since we have Malefic Roar, those crits are gonna hurt, and they will hurt bad. There's nothing much to be said from this item, other than we want it for the extra 40% critical damage it brings. This will let us nuke squishy enemy targets, just in case they somehow survive the combo. The second reason why Berserker's Fury is important is tied to our last item, the Wings of the Apocalypse Queen, also known as Wotak. Wotak is an underrated item, mostly because people think that 50 seconds is way too long of a cooldown, but with a skill set like Haya's, I can see why Moonton has kept the cooldown so long. We want Wotak for several reasons. The first and most important being what we alluded to earlier, the synergy it has with Berserker's Fury, whenever its passive activates. Wotak's passive is incredibly powerful, and if your health drops below 40%, you will see an icon appear with the item image inside. When you see this, it means it's do or die, because for 5 seconds, you will receive 50% less damage, and your incredibly crazy damaging crits now benefit from a massive 45% lifesteal, 30% of which came from the passive of Wotak. It also brings a bit more physical attack, 1000 HP, and 10% more cooldown. Endgame, if absolutely necessary, take Immortality in place of the Magic Shoes, just for that extra survivability. If you die, and this item is still on cooldown, switch over to the Rose Gold Meteor until it becomes available again. If you use any other build, it's up to you, and it may work 100% fine for you, but you will not notice the same impact this build has on the game with any other build. Alright, what's next? The emblem, of course? Let's talk about that. Hayabusa can take a variety of emblems. Festival of Blood, Talent, Fighter emblem is nice for extra sustain. Electroflash Talent Marksman emblem is nice for more critical damage and higher mobility. But the real soft spot is in the Assassin emblem with the Bounty Hunter talent. You see, I maxed out the physical attack stat and I have 2 points on the penetration stat while putting just 1 point into the crit stat. This emblem configuration will grant you 17.5 physical penetration. What does that mean anyways? It means if a target has 100 armor, your attacks will hurt them like if they only had 82.5 armor. The same configuration also carries an extra 27 physical attack, 2% movement speed, 5% cooldown, and a 4.7 chance to crit on basic attacks. Trust me when I say that 4.7 can sometimes feel like 20%. Needless to say that Blade of Despair is a very expensive item to get first, so that Bounty Hunter talent will really help with the cost of this build for Hayabusa. Learned enough yet? No? Okay! Let's get into the actual 100% proper way to use Hayabusa, but for this, I need to explain the mechanics of skill 2. I already explained to you what this skill does, but what I didn't explain is how this skill functions. If you don't tag an enemy, no matter what angle you come from, Hayabusa will always TP side to side, front, and then back when you auto-tap skill 2. You can change which shadow you want to go to by aiming the skill. A red line will appear showing you which shadow it will take you to. That's not why I'm explaining this. The whole story changes when you actually tag an enemy hero, because auto-clicking will force you to TP to the enemy first. We don't want that for a very important reason. The reason being activating Endless Battle efficiently. This is the proper combo using Hayabusa. The proper combo using Hayabusa should now be playing across your screen, but it is extremely difficult to execute due to the timing it requires. We will start by using skill 2 to close the gap and come within melee range of the enemy. Hit them with a basic attack, and then skill 1. Now we don't have to wait for the shurikens to travel back. We will want to instantly teleport to any of the other 2 shadows by aiming at them. The third shadow, however, we do not have to aim. We will just auto-click it since it will take us to the enemy. After we arrive, we will again use a basic attack, skill 1, and then teleport to the last remaining shadow. Assuming you did this correctly, and that all of the shurikens hit, you have just hit the enemy with damage from the following: 12 maximum shurikens or 6 minimum shurikens on the way out. Quad shadow tag and quad shadow teleport, as in when you tag them and when you teleport it to them. Basic attack and endless battle passive twice. I will call this combo the shadow combo, since you don't have to use your ultimate to deal this amount of damage. I recommend you practice this combo on bots or monsters first until you get used to it, because I sure can't always get it right. The only other combo worth mentioning is the most used one, the no risks ult combo. You will want to have 4 kunai marks on the enemy before you use your ultimate, so a simple shuriken throw and shadow tag should be enough to have them marked and maximizes your ultimate damage. If the enemy has no crowd control or very low soft crowd control like a slowdown, you can aim for the shadow of choice, but if the enemy has a very hard cooldown like a kick or a stun, you want to spam your quad shadow skill while the ult is in effect. This will keep you somewhat safe from enemies and allows Hayabusa to die for kills easily. With all that being said, and as we approach the end of the video, I have come to the part that a very few select part of the audience always wants to hear, or end up asking about eventually. Why? Why do you say Hayabusa is the deadliest assassin? Aren't all of them deadly in their own way? Well, the answer is yes. Yes, they are. But no other assassin has the ability to do so many different things in every different game. Let me elaborate. For example, you could always just solo lane and split push with Hayabusa, something heroes like Zilong are known to do. You could always just be poking and peeling enemies off due to the nature of your skills, just like Saber does. Or you could always participate in teamfights by adding cancer slowdowns and horrid amounts of damage from your Shadow's true damage TP combos, as well as your ultimate. Kind of like, Gujin does. It will always be extremely difficult to be caught with Hayabusa, and unless you have 3 or more allies with you, I wouldn't recommend risking your lanes just to kill him. Remember I promised you basics, combos, split pushing, side laning, mid laning, jungling, ganking, and attacking high crowd control enemies? Let's dive into that for the final showdown. If you are strictly split pushing with Hayabusa, always keep your shadows and ultimate handy. Pay attention to the map, and when you think enemies are on the way, go to the next lane and put pressure on that lane. This will keep enemies constantly rotating just to keep up with your split push power. And it'll knock one of them out of teamfights because they just aren't close to the teamfights. They're worried about you and their towers. Side laning with Hayabusa is relatively simple. Just stay on top of the waves and prioritize the waves over jungling. Switch side lanes if there are too many enemies putting pressure on you. Mid laning is also relatively simple. Hayabusa doesn't really need that buff. His energy regen is already high enough as long as you hit the targets, but if you can get the buff, it'll help out for sure. Just don't worry too much if the enemies invade for the buff. It's their loss since you can level up faster from the lane XP that they just lost. See, the thing about laning with Hayabusa is that you don't really lane, you just roam and put consistent pressure on all lanes. Help in team fights when needed, but you should never spend too much time in the jungle, which leads me to my next point. Don't jungle with Hayabusa. Stop doing it. Jungle items are useless for this assassin once again, due to the fact that he just roams and cleans waves way too fast to be worrying about the jungle. Leave that for your mage or something. The only reason you would ever want to buy a jungle item for Haya is if your team is pressuring the lanes already, basically doing your job for you. And in this case, the jungles are free for your taking, but that is the only exception. If you do not heed my advice, you will be struggling to keep your lanes up and stay ahead of the enemy team in golden levels. So, ganking is super easy with Hayabusa. He literally has no drawbacks to ganking, and can just teleport away if the situation becomes too risky. The correct way to gank enemies with Hayabusa is to shadow tag them once their health is below 50%. Otherwise, just keep poking, but do not tag until they are at least half HP. This allows you to teleport to them and use your ultimate to finish them off, provided they aren't near any other crowd control source. Or if you have Aegis handy. Did he just say Aegis? Yes. Yes, I did. Aegis is the go-to spell for Hayabusa because of the state heroes are being released now are in. Most heroes come with some type of crowd control, and you need to be able to take a Saber ult or two. So Aegis is recommended. It also helps out a lot when dealing with enemies based on DHS, since they rely on your HP bar to be intact in order to activate the passive of DHS. DHS is Demon Hunter Sword, by the way. When diving high crowd control enemies, you must always have Aegis ready, and make sure they have 4 marks over their head. The Shadow combo is not recommended here as they will try to keep you in place as soon as you appear. In this case, you should ult once you know that there aren't many minions around to maximize single target damage, and believe me when I say that you should not be dying to heroes like Eudora or Saber. Unless, of course, you dive into both of them for whatever reason. I hope this taught you all you need to know about Hayabusa, guys. Remember, practice makes perfect, and a Hayabusa will fit into almost every team, similar to how Cho fits into almost every team. Thanks for watching, and subscribe if you haven't already. Zero out.